Welcome everyone. I'm glad that you can take this time to join us with Righting Relations, and we're doing a series on writing our relations with food. And today is the third session in our series, and we are focusing on protecting the health of people and earth. And our presenter today is Denise MacDonald. But before we get into the actual program, I want to talk a little bit or share a little bit about Righting Relations. Righting Relations is a woman-led pan-Canadian network of adult educators. We are working for radical social change, and we are funded by the Catherine Donnelly Foundation and use popular education in our work to right relations. We are organized in hubs across Canada. And in the Western Hub, there is Regina, Edmonton, and Winnipeg. And Central Hub is Montreal, Ottawa, Hamilton, and Toronto. And in the Eastern Hub includes the Maritime Provinces, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. I'm not sure if they have anyone from Prince Edward Island, but they may have participants from there as well. Our priorities as Righting Relations is to build capacity within members by supporting and providing resources for them to continue to do the work that they are already doing. And we operate in a circle, recognizing our interconnectedness and the need to share power and space equitably. We are committed to a heart-centered approach to leadership, which means that we practice the universal laws of love, respect, compassion, and empathy for all creation. It also means that we ourselves need to do that work of being authentic and right with ourselves in the process of righting relations with others. We are radically inclusive, and our goal is to build trust and relationships, as well as to have a safe space to share some of our challenges and be supported. We embrace the reconciliation movement to right relations between Indigenous and settler communities in Canada, and we seek to build bridges across diverse peoples. Today, we are taking steps to right our relationship with our land and our food. And right now, I will present to you Mirtha, who will offer a land acknowledgement and introduce our speaker. Mirtha is a member of Righting Relations Regina Circle, and a member of the Western Hub's Grandmothers Circle, as well as the 2 SLGBTQIA working group. Mirtha, you're on.
Hi. I would like to recognize that we are on Treaty 4 territory, what we know it as these days, but it is a part of Turtle Island where the buffalo live, and how grateful we all are to be allowed to live and share and grow and learn and love in this part of Turtle Island. I would like also to read something that is originally from Chief Jake Swamp. It's thoughts to give thanks. So it says, to be human is an honor, and we offer thanks for all the gift of life. Mother Earth, we thank you for giving us everything we need. Thank you, deep blue waters around Mother Earth, for you are the force that gives life and takes the thirst away from all living things. We give thanks to green grasses that feel so good against our bare feet, for the cool beauty you bring to Mother Earth's floor. Thank you, good foods from Mother Earth, our life sustainers, for making us happy when we are hungry. Fruits and berries, we thank you for your color and sweetness. We are all thankful to good medicine herbs for healing us when we're sick. All the trees in the world, we're thankful for the shade and warmth you give us. We give thanks for you, gentle four winds, for bringing clean air from us to breathe from all the four directions. Thank you, Grandfather Thunder Beings, for bringing rains to help all living things to grow. Elder Brother Sun, we send thanks for shining your light and warming Mother Earth. Spirit protectors of our past and present, we thank you for showing us ways to live in peace and harmony with one another. Our ancestors who survived and made possible for us to be here. And most of all, thank you, Great Spirit, for giving us all these wonderful gifts. So I will, with that, those thoughts that I wanted to share today. And I would like to just introduce the presenter. In this session is Denise. She will share about how can we set the table for food resilience, learn how we can work together to improve our health and adapt to a changing climate. Denise MacDonald is a member of the Righting Relations Regina Circle. She is a stalwart social change activist and organizer who believes that a better world is possible. She's the Public Engagement and Member Service Officer at Saskatchewan Council for International Cooperation and holds a master's degree from the University of Regina and a BA Honors in International Development and Political Science from the University of Toronto. Denise gathers her strength from the incredibly brave student partners she has met through her work at SCIC, and it travels to Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa, and has seen firsthand the positive impact of global solidarity. Denise is another volunteer and enjoys building community by hosting events where she makes sure there is delicious food to share. She believes in living her values and enjoys digging in the compost, gardening, and cooking for friends and family, all the while challenging people to acknowledge their privilege and responsibility. She loves being in nature and is constantly looking for ways to protect the earth, and for that feels a lot of gratitude every day. I have to add that she's one of the strongest allies that we have. So with that, Denise, just please do the presentation.
Thank you so much, Mirta and Lisa and everybody that's joining us today. I am just going to do a PowerPoint and talk about some of the issues we're facing and also some of the solutions. And so thank you again for joining us. So, of course, things in the world are a tiny bit dire right now, I guess you could say. We have biodiversity loss, we have ecosystem collapse, and of course, we have climate change. So biodiversity is defined by the species and ecosystems in a defined area. And the loss of biodiversity is the ongoing extinction of species at a global level or the loss of species in a given habitat. So it can be caused by habitat degradation or destruction, overexploitation, the introduction of invasive species, pollution, or climate change. And so the era that we're in right now is called the Anthropocene. So we moved from the Holocene, so that began 11,000 years ago, and this is considered the Anthropocene. So it's the epoch beginning when humans began to have a significant impact on the Earth's geology and ecosystems. So there's a little bit of debate on when this started. So it could have been the agricultural revolution, that was 15,000 years ago, could have been the Industrial Revolution in the 1760s, or the atomic bomb tests, which is when radioactive material began entering the environment. So what the Anthropocene is characterized by is mass extinctions of plant and animal species, oceans that are polluted. So the oceans will have more plastic than fish by weight by 2050, they estimate. and an altered atmosphere. So we are considered to be in the 6th mass extinction. So there's been 5 mass extinctions before this during the 4.6 billion years of Earth's history. And some of the reasons that there has been mass extinctions, so climate change, lack of oxygen in the oceans, cooling of air temperatures, microbes, volcanic activity, and pH levels and sea levels of the ocean. And then of course, meteors keep falling on Earth and causing mass extinctions as well. So it's considered that we've entered the 6th mass extinction. So right now, there is the annihilation of species on Earth. So that's amphibians, birds, fish, invertebrates, including insects, mammals, I said including humans, question mark, plants, and reptiles. So the IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it was established in 1988 by the United Nations, and it prepares comprehensive assessment reports on climate change, its causes, its impacts, and possible responses. So it is the body of scientists that provide the knowledge to understand about human-induced climate change. So part of the issue with climate change is the transgression of the planetary boundaries. So there's 9 that have been established as planetary boundaries. So climate change, change in biosphere integrity, ozone depletion, ocean acidification, biogeochemical flows, land system change, freshwater use, atmospheric aerosol loading, and the introduction of novel entities. So of those 9 planetary boundaries, 4 of them have been transgressed. So of course, we talk about climate change, and biodiversity loss is one of the things that's happening. We've changed the phosphorus and nitrogen cycles with our activity. And of course, land system change. Like there is really no place on Earth that humans haven't impacted the land. So that's where we're at, like from a scientific perspective. So transgressing a boundary increases the risk that human activities could inadvertently drive the Earth system into a much less hospitable state, damaging efforts to reduce poverty and leading to a deterioration of human well-being in many parts of the world, including wealthy countries. So what we see is basically having the oceans have less fish, so there's less protein for people to eat. And air pollution is a huge problem. There is a lot of people with asthma and health impacts of climate change. So what is happening is humanity is using resources faster than the Earth can regenerate. So that is known as Earth Overshoot Day. So it's getting to be earlier and earlier. So by the mid-year, we've already used more resources from the Earth than the Earth can replenish. So that includes taking resources out, but it also includes putting garbage and toxins back into the Earth. So before the Earth can manage those resources, only half a year is gone. So basically what that boils down to is we're using more Earths than there are. So that isn't sustainable. And this year it's later than normal because of COVID-19, because people are using less resources. So of course there's some people that deny that climate change is happening. So I guess what I'd say is consider who is making the claims that climate change is not happening. Those claims are not based on science. The science is clear that human-induced climate change is happening. And consider that it's based on the desire to make profit. The idea that you can pollute less and extract less means that you'll make less profit. And further to that, climate change is actually accelerating even faster than predicted. So the models that like the Ipcc is coming out with are actually pretty modest. And the reason why this is happening is because how conventional economics looks at the earth. So economics considers like production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, but it doesn't consider natural resources and public health as resources. They're considered externalities. So they're not counted in the economics of our system. And so that being said, what we really need is a paradigm shift. We need to begin to understand that we're all interconnected. We are nature. We are a part of nature. Humans are not separate from nature, and that the health of humans is reliant on the health of the earth. So something that people have come up with, there's so many great organizations and thinkers and scientists coming up with these great ideas of how we can do this paradigm shift. So one of them is donut economics. So the circle on the outside is the 9 boundaries of the earth that we talked about earlier. And then the inside circle is what we need. So what everybody needs to live a healthy life. And so instead of just considering the profits, we have to start counting in well-being and health and water quality and poverty and sustainability for the future and gender equality and those things. So the donut economics, like there's other ways of measuring, like there's full cost accounting or true cost accounting. There's gross national happiness indicators. There's so many different ways of thinking about economics that isn't the conventional thinking. And so some of the models that have come up are just transition, agro ecology, regenerative organic agriculture, and permaculture. So I'm going to briefly touch on those. So a just transition is phasing out industries that harm workers' health and the planet. And it's rooted in workers finding pathways to transition to other jobs. It also builds economic and political power to shift from an extractive economy to a regenerative economy. And it cultivates deep democracy in which workers and communities have control over the decisions that affect their lives. And it approaches production and consumption cycles holistically towards zero waste. A lot of what happens is that workers, like oil patch workers and different workers, are upset by the idea of not having fossil fuels. They'll lose their jobs. This paradigm says that they need different jobs. We agree that jobs are important. We agree that people need livelihoods, but the just transition is transitioning from jobs that are harmful to workers and the earth, and transitioning to jobs that are that help workers and the earth. So just transition also addresses environmental racism. I'm not sure how many of you know that term, but it's where communities of color and low-income communities have been and continue to be disproportionately exposed to and negatively impacted by hazardous pollution and industrial practices. So it's just and equitable. It redresses past harms through reparations, and it creates new relationships of power. So power with as opposed to power over. So some examples would be shifting from dirty energy to energy democracy, from funding highways to expanding public transit, from incinerators and landfills to zero waste, from industrial food systems to food sovereignty, from gentrification to community land rights, from military violence to peaceful resolution, and from rampant destructive development to ecosystem restoration. Another school of thought is agro ecology. So it's farming that centers on food production that makes the best use of nature's goods and services while not damaging these resources. So it works in harmony with local ecosystems. It improves soil and plant quality and uses less chemicals. And the thing about agriculture is that it is one of the activities that we do that has the most impact on Earth. And so we cannot underestimate the power of amending the soil and improving the soil. And that happens through, like, also soil captures carbon. So, you know, we have too much carbon in the atmosphere. The idea that we can improve our soil and capture carbon, like improving our farming practices is like a huge way that we can stop climate change. So the other thing about the food system that we have, because the soil is not nutritious, the topsoil is not nutritious anymore, the food isn't as nutritious. So that gives us food that is more nutritious if we have healthier soil. And then it also builds on ancestral knowledge and customs. So E.O. Wilson is a big hero of mine. The 20th century will not be remembered for its wars or its technological achievements, but as a century in which we stood by and either actively endorsed or passively accepted the massive destruction of biological and cultural diversity. And that is that we're losing so much Indigenous knowledge right now, and that we really need to capitalize on like how valuable that knowledge is, and really take it to heart and utilize it to solve some of the problems that we're having now. So regenerative organic agriculture is more than more organic, it's regenerative. So it also, it encourages innovation, because humans are like infinitely innovative. Like we can solve problems. Like we want to improve, we want to regenerate, we want to go beyond sustainable. Sustainable means that we keep it the same as this, but this is not working well for humans and the earth. So again, talking about building soil health, topsoil is endangered. Like it takes millions of years to get an inch of topsoil, and topsoil is, because of the way we farm, with like the tilling, and the fact that the soil lacks nutrients, it's being washed into the water and it's being blown away by the wind. And so like topsoil, if there's one thing you can do, is like compost and build soil. It's a beautiful solution to our problems. And I'm not sure how many of you have heard of permaculture, but permaculture is permanent agriculture. It loves perennials, but also permanent culture. It understands that we need to improve agriculture in order to maintain our civilization and our culture. So it's recognized as the most adaptive and durable framework for transforming culture and agriculture in the post-industrial world. It's the art of designing beneficial relationships. It's a system of ethical, ecological design, And by nourishing and supporting more parts of the system, it's stronger and more vibrant in its entirety. If one thing flourishes, so does the other. So it's very holistic. Like permaculture, it's based on ethics. So people care, earth care, and fair share. And it looks at things like shelter, which is natural building. And like, because a lot of the buildings we live in are sick buildings. They're toxic. Indoor air pollution is more dangerous than outdoor air pollution. So natural building, like saving energy and also using renewable energy, harvesting water and making sure we don't waste water, building the soil, building food systems that work in harmony with each other. And so permaculture really looks at all aspects of human society. So these are just some of the things, like the features of permaculture. Like it really looks at all kinds of ways of living in the world that are different from what we're doing now. So it's, like I said, it's really holistic, and it looks at all aspects of human society. So the thing is, it doesn't matter how much food we grow. What matters is how we get along with each other in order to grow and share that food. So we really need to focus on social permaculture. So we need to improve communication and manage conflict and resolve disputes. That is the main issue in the world, is conflict between humans. And that's really where we need to start. So some of the features that human society is afflicted by are selfishness, apathy, and greed. The world has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. And I think it was the Dalai Lama that said that apathy was like the biggest problem on earth, that people are apathetic. So I'll just read this. We are embedded in larger systems that do not encourage beneficial relationships. Our overarching economic system sacrifices the good of the people on the earth to the goal of achieving short-term profits. It maintains itself by fostering systems of prejudice and exploitation, racism, sexism, classism, heterosexism, ageism, and ableism. All those constructs that separate us and elevate some people's good over others. Those systems affect us deeply, often unconsciously, no matter how much we might deplore them and struggle against them. So the idea is that partly it's our fault. Like partly we need to reflect on ourselves. Who are we? What are we doing? Are we benefiting others? What's happening? But partly it's systemic. Obviously, there's only so much we can do within the systems that we have. And so those structural oppressions that were just discussed, those are real. And it's very hard for us to overcome them, but partly we need to be aware of them, and we need to figure out how we can work towards ending oppression. This is such a beautiful time right now with Black Lives Matters and the Me Too movement and Indigenous solidarity. Like, this is the time when we are saying, this is unacceptable. We cannot live in a world where the majority of humans and other creatures are oppressed. So this is a beautiful time for transformation. So what we need to do really is be together in groups. We need to have dialogue. talk to each other, work together, see how we can improve our world. So working in groups, we want to create a welcoming environment for everyone. We want to create meaningful diversity, and we want to generate resilience and group intelligence. Diversity is everything within humans and in ecosystems. Diversity is resilience. So while changing individuals is difficult, we can design social structures that favor beneficial patterns of human behavior. We can create conditions that favor nurturing, empowering relationships. And I was thinking about things like, for example, the justice system. Like, there's a lot of talk of that right now. We could design social structures that support people living in poverty and with mental health instead of punishing people. So that it's possible to change social structures. We can live in a world where if women are assaulted, that the people get charged with assault. And if there's racism, people will get charged with hate crimes. Like, it is possible to live in a world where the social structures are anti-oppressive. So it's up to us to support the change in those structures. And I just wanted to end with this photo, which is of a bee, because I'm sure that people know that bees are endangered. Like so many things in the world, so much diversity is endangered. So we really need bees. Like, bees are really important. So along with composting, I'm going to recommend that you plant a bee-friendly garden as well, if you can. And so now I'll just open it up if anybody has any questions or comments. You can also use the chat box if you want, if anybody has anything for the chat box.
Oh, Denise, that was so informative. Thank you for sharing.
Hi, my name's Michelle. I'm from Saskatchewan, but I'm currently residing in Ottawa. And I'm also part of Righting Relations. I sit on the steering committee, the National Steering Committee. So I'm very well versed in the challenges, obviously, being a First Nations person from Saskatchewan and living in Ottawa. And I just wanted to comment that I loved what you said. Very well said, very well put. Just want to be aware that of a couple of things as I was listening to you, if you don't mind me saying. Okay, so it's proven city dwellers are less connected. Before this started, the COVID-19 started, I spent a lot of time in my life with elders, and we were already pre-warned that something like this was going to happen. So this was not a surprise, this bug that came along. We just weren't sure what it was going to be. So in the meantime, while we got all these teachings, they also gave us directions. First of all is to go back to the land. The other directions they were giving us was where to go, and of course things to save in case disaster comes along and to bring for the peoples. Now, well, I attended all these things. I am a city-bound person because I don't have a vehicle until today, of course. And the first thing the city did was restrict everybody into the city. They didn't want us traveling. They didn't want us going to the land. And the police were even at the borders, keeping us out of the certain areas of the land. That totally went against our culture, and it totally was not recognized even as First Nations people to go back to the land. And I was a little put out that First Nations people were keeping other First Nations people from their home, from their homes, when we were supposed to be, we're supposed to be a unit, okay? That neither here nor there. I understand the fear for theirs. And us in the city, we pick up other germs and we aren't as secure. I understood all of that. So there's a major shift needed because there is no cultural understanding. And a lot of the healing that needs to be done now could have been avoided if we had been allowed to go out in the land. That's, and I just wanted to make that point because understanding what we're going through, it's not because we can't do it. I don't believe that there's no way it can be done. But also this past year, there was a moose moratorium in Algonquin community. And what they wanted was they wanted a count of how many moose were out there. And we got no support from the government. In fact, they used us for the stats, but they didn't actually support us with this. And it was a few reserves that were doing this. And I went out there one day, and the people that, with us, in all sincerity, wanting to know about the moose, what you caught, could you let us know? And people were hiding the moose. They weren't claiming the moose, and they weren't First Nations. So first of all, they thought their rights, by us asking these questions, were going to be taken away from killing these moose by us asking questions and wanting to know the population. So we're fighting a system that does not want our words, that does not want our knowledge, and does not ask for anything other than to tell us what we can and cannot do. That's one of the things that I had thought about. So another thing I was thinking was about the Inuit people, okay? And here's another example. Why was it so important to bring vegetables to Inuit country? If you understood the landscape and you understood the land and you understood the weather, vegetables don't make sense. But the diet they have, and I want to also take note that harvesting also includes our foods, our four-leggeds, our two-leggeds. That's harvesting also. And so they had to bring these vegetables because it was in their food guide. Do you know when I phoned or when I was talking to Health Canada, I explained to them this food guide makes no sense to First Nations people. And they said, yes, we're bringing out a separate one for you guys next year. And I said, hold it. Wasn't it our people that helped you survive to be here? And you guys made up jobs for yourselves to tell us how we're going to eat. This is a wonderful system you guys got. And I know I'm venting right now, but I just wanted to, I loved what you said, but you're one of the very few that actually understand what we're fighting against. And other countries are fighting against seed trading. Seed trading of all things, to be able to feed the people, to be able to keep our traditions, to be able to keep our culture. And I find that very frustrating, very hard. And when you say it's a beautiful time to change things, we're not the ones that need to change. We had our systems. We're the ones you need to listen to. And there are harvesting. We have the knowledge. There's harvesting. I got taught by an elder, every 7th plant you take from your group, from your patch, which allows it to replenish. And you do it again every time you want to take something out of your garden. Every 7th plant. So, I mean, there's teachings out there that I have knowledge of that I have no, well, not desire. I have nowhere to be able to share it because there's nobody there to listen and there's nobody asking. On the other hand, we also have to battle lawn versus gardens in the city, where somehow it looks much better to have a lawn than it does to be able to feed your neighbors. We have to fight the animals for the food that we make because there is nothing for the animals, the wild animals in the city. And we have to ask for permission for everything that we do here in the city. So it's not like a free-for-all to go out and plant a tree and say, hey, we got it. And I just wanted to explain all of that from a city perspective. But like I said, I did absolutely love what you had to share. Big Witch.
Thank you so much for sharing. Like everything you said is so important. And like it really boils down to power and control and profit and greed. So by like there's a concentration of wealth in the world, as we know, like 5 guys own as much as the bottom 50% of humans. So we know that there's a concentration of wealth. And there's also part of that is land, like displacing people off the land grabbing, and that people don't have access to land. If you don't have access to land, you lose a lot of power and control and possibilities of making money too. So it's that idea of privatizing everything, that everything is being concentrated in the hands of a few. And it's this idea of the commons that we've lost, which we need to get back, is, you know, the commons. And also just that Indigenous people need to have access to land. I mean, you know, it's stolen land. That's what it is. And so, and like what you were saying about the teachings is at a time when we need Indigenous knowledge more than ever, it's being lost. And that is one of the greatest travesties of humanity ever. Like we are shooting ourselves in the foot. It's not good. Like we need Indigenous knowledge. And I really, really appreciate your perspective. So thank you very much for that. Does anybody have anything else or like a comment, follow up on that or anything?
I was going to add, thank you, Denise, for putting this presentation together. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Michelle, for your comments, because it's much needed. And my question is of the paradigm shift, the 4 that you have listed, which one of them or any of them do include Indigenous knowledge and holistic approach, if you're aware of?
Well, there's been a lot of criticism actually of permaculture, because permaculture is basically based on Indigenous knowledge, but it was started in Australia, and it's like the credit hasn't been given to Indigenous people, but it's a lot of Indigenous knowledge that it's based on. And I think that would be the one, and even just like the involvement of diversity in the permaculture movement. There isn't enough diversity, or just the land acknowledgement and that kind of thing. Like it has received criticism for that. And but there is people in the movement that are trying to like help people understand the history.
Okay. And
can I just throw something in there about what Michelle was speaking about in terms of urbanization of Indigenous people and the inability of other people to be able to listen to her knowledge base and others that she is associated with. This is part of the problem around what's happening in our society, is that only certain voices have platforms, which you know, and you're talking about the power structures that be, but really the discourses at universities have to be changed, because we have this not only neoliberal discourse, but we've got this huge influx right now due to COVID and other such things of neoconservatism. And the first positions actually that are going or being diminished are those that are associated with critiquing measures or Indigenous knowledge systems in the real crux of what they are. And you can see this right across the nation. In fact, the only universities right now that are hiring people to do this kind of work, either Indigenous people or allies or, you know, settlers with mixed ancestries, the only universities really are the coastal universities. And I know this because I'm attached to many of them and the scholars that work there. And I think, you know, we have to, as the Righting Relations people, the women that of this organization and others that are associated have to start standing up and start speaking out, because these universities are doing damage to Indigenous peoples. They can talk about reconciliation, but until they are using the language of these multiple nations, and really, you know, they've just changed the Canada Food Guide into 6 languages. They did not consult with the people of these communities to see what kinds of foods are really the food of health, for example, Inuit or Michif peoples or Ojibwe peoples or, you know, Ohosat peoples. Like, what, that makes no sense. So we have got these ideas about research that are ridiculous because they're not actually honoring the people of the nations. And some Indigenous people themselves are caught up in these frameworks, and they will do whatever is required to retain their positions or to be in harmony with these universities. And then some of us are not, so therefore we are excluded from the discourses. And this goes on and on and on, and really, it's time now for changes, real change, and real, you know, we can't just keep quoting people. We have to actually get our boots on the ground and start doing something. I don't know exactly what the answers are, but I do know other people that are on the Righting Relations Council or committee, and I think that they are advocating for this very thing as well. And you know, I know a lot of elders right across the nation, and they're the people that are saying, you know what, we need to give a platform for every voice, not just the voices of people that are in power, that are running these universities and colleges and communities and, you know, colonial councils, but all the voices, the young people, the women, the people on the streets, those people that are incarcerated, people that have knowledge. So I don't know, it is, maybe you guys, you could talk more, Michelle or Denise or all of you, about these issues, but it's, even the university students today, I've taught in a number of universities, and there is backlash towards anti-oppressive pedagogies, and even having to, you know, sit and listen to lectures where people are giving information about Indigenous knowledge systems and the critical importance that they are in teaching little children about these principles and these ways of knowing. And even the teachings that you were talking about, where you harvest every 7th plant, like, there's so many children that don't even understand anything about the earth, and Indigenous children included. So we have a lot to do, and I don't know what I'm saying, but that's what I'm saying. And there's a lot more to environmental racism than we think. I mean, it's permanent in every single system, and all of those isms are connected to it. But this idea of environmental racism is so profound within urban settings. It's just everywhere, and people that are Indigenous in cities or in urban locales, they are hindered from their culture, from their lands, from their people, from their language in many regards. So we just have to, we've got to start really from the grassroots and make some big changes. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Adriana.
Hi, how are you? Good morning, good afternoon. Oh my God, whatever. My name is Adriana. I'm also part of the Righting Relations. I'm an immigrant myself, and I was just thinking, reflecting of what Margaret and Denise and Michelle were saying, and I mean, the lack of understanding and the lack of also, you know, reflection on what immigrants bring when they come to Canada in terms of their cultural practice, agricultural practices. For instance, most of the refugees coming from Colombia are people from rural areas where they were just forced to fly because of the war we were having there. So when you talk about land, and you talk about land with immigrants, and we talk about land with refugees, we also talk about something complex, because it's something that they have been denied to have, they denied to enjoy, denied to live in. They have been, because of economic interests, my country, and let me tell you, a lot of them are from corporate mining Canadian companies. They are just displacing people from their sites, displacing from their land where they were growing their food, to face urban settings that they have no idea what to do there. And if beyond that, you are a refugee and you come a country like this, and you hear people talking about, oh, you need to connect to your land. Wow, there is a lot of healing that as an immigrant we also have to have, because for peasants, not for indigenous people, but for peasants too, for people that have been living from the land their entire life, be forced to live there, and go to another country is also a very, very painful. I'm just wanted to add that because sometimes we forget, as Margaret was saying, to really bring the context in which everybody is living or coming from. That would give us the possibility to create a space where all that voices can be heard in their specificity, in their differentiality. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Does anybody want to respond to anything right now?
I don't want to respond, but I really want to say thank you to Adriana. I really identify what you say. And it's really painful to be uprooted from your land, to leave it all behind and come here. And then you hear your brothers that are indigenous telling you, go back to the land, and they are not allowed to because of greed. That's what happened in my country too, in Chile, that the multinationals and the Canadian mining and all that are killing my people. They're killing our men, they're killing our children, and now the women are the ones who are faced with supporting the family and defending the land, because we're the niche that I'm from, we're called Mapuche, and that means people of the land. So it's really, really important that we all go back to the land. And that's why I said I'm so grateful to be living in this part of Turtle Island, because I was in the south, in another part of Turtle Island. So we need to integrate all that. We have so many people who come here and we're lost. And it's hard to live with one foot in here and one foot over there. It's like uprooting a tree, and then you take it somewhere else and you said, there, survive. And you find all the things that are full of greed, the same things that you were escaping. Like, what's going on? So it is important that we all look across the lines and, like Margaret said, let's put the boot on the ground, all the boots, and start doing the work that we need to do. I wanted to say that. My heart is really, I'm really emotional right now, and that's okay.
Thank you, Mirta. Like, a few things have come to mind. One is, like, one of the permaculture principles is it depends, because it depends. Like, what I'm doing here isn't the same as what somebody's doing in Chile or in the Inuit in the north. Like, diversity is strength. Like, I mean, it's easier to just do one food guide, but that's not how it works. Like, you know, it's diversity needs to be cultivated. And the other thing I was thinking about was, like, planet of slums. Like, there are so many slums on Earth where people do not have their basic needs met because of land being appropriated, and there's going to be more people living in slums than living anywhere else on Earth. And one thing that Stephen Lewis from the Stephen Lewis Foundation said was that climate change is a monumental crime against humanity. And I believe that as well with land and housing, that it is a crime that people are living in slums and refugee camps. There's refugee camps of 1 million people. Like, it is totally ridiculous. And it's intentional. Like, it is policy driven. It is made by people in decisions made by people in rooms. Now, this is how we're going to conduct ourselves as humans. Like, there is stunting. Humans don't have enough nutritious food. So we're cultivating a generation of brain damaged humans because we don't want to give you nutritious or allow them to have the land to have nutritious food. Like, it's so beyond the pale, but it's decisions being made by people, and that is where we're at. And the reason why I talked about like conflict resolution and groups and that sort of thing is that, you know, it's divide and conquer. It's like we divide ourselves along all these lines so that we just fight with each other. You know, we need to work together so that we can create a better world. And that starts with like how I treat every human I come in contact with and how others treat me, and being really aware of how we are in groups and how we're treating others and our impact on humans and the earth. Like, but it's not that I can't control the system. So I'm not saying it's up to me to change everything. I'm saying humans need to work together to change the system. So it's both pieces though. It's your awareness of your power and then working together. Conflict resolution, we do not learn those skills. I need more of that myself, you know, conflict resolution, conflict transformation, group dynamics. Like, one of the slides was Starhawk. She does a lot of permaculture stuff and she works with groups, and she wrote a book called The Empowerment Manual, and she talks about groups and group dynamics, and like, we need to learn how to work with each other better. We need to learn how to have courageous conversations. We need to learn how to have difficult conversations. And I think that's what's happening right now in this moment. And I am loving it. Like, I am in, like, yes, I want to confront my racist neighbors. I really do. And I will. And I will continue to do it because we have to stand up and we have to fight back because we need to make changes and we have power to do that. So it's really, really exciting right now. But we need to learn like tactics, and we need to, like, this is work. This is group work that we need to do, and it's hard.
I think, sorry, we were talking yesterday in our little group, it's a working group that we have, that when you confront and conflict resolution is, when do you stop being firm? How many times are you gonna be attacked and you're gonna be silenced because you're aggressive, because you're rude? So when is enough is enough? And how do you do it? Because there are times that you cannot do what they've been telling you and ingrained in your brain, that you have to be nice, you have to be polite, whatever it is that the term means, according to whom, right? That's the part that I don't understand, because to me, I'm tired of, okay, we're gonna work together. But when we are in a group and the majority is colonialized to the hills, I will have to say it that way, they want to silence all of us people of color because we're too aggressive, because we are too violent, and we cannot express our rage, our pain that is ingrained in there. It comes from generations. It comes from way back when. And when you see once again somebody opening their mouths and saying, now, we have to be nice. I don't have time for that. So we need to learn how to deal with conflict, but yet to give room to have the healing and not to be silenced and not to be controlled or oppressed again. That's where I'm at, and I don't think that I have time to educate ignorant people who don't want to learn. Really, I don't.
Thanks, Mirta. Does anyone have anything to say on that?
I just want to respond to Mirta's remark about that. And really, it's not your job to keep teaching. It is the job of the settlers or people that are non-Indigenous to start learning, to start asking, to start offering and gifting others to gain that knowledge. And they have got to, you know, take responsibility, not in a superficial way, but in a way that's authentic, to actually make changes. And, you know, we're not going to make any changes for 50 years if we don't start with little children in preschools. And legal and moral frameworks have to be applied to all of what has to change, because if it doesn't happen, we know this from legal scholars like Martha Minow and various others, that this is not going to change. There will be no change. And it's the same with the civil rights movement. So right now, there's all the backlash, but really the civil rights movement was a movement towards tolerance. Tolerance does not give you acceptance. It doesn't give you platform. It doesn't give you recognition in the sense of authenticity. It doesn't really give you a place of equality. It gives you kind of like a step into a space, but that's it. And it really has to go way beyond this idea of tolerance that was kind of, you know, generated through the civil rights movement back in the day, or all of these movements, you know, the Indian rights movement, the disability rights movement, all of them. They've all had, I mean, when we think about when those things took place in the 60s and 70s, they've all had their place, but now we've got to do something that talks about regeneration. Like what you were talking about earlier. It's not just about sustainability. It has to be regeneration. And how is it we're going to do that to get to a place of conflict resolution and peace among these various nations? You know, it's the capitalistic model that we live in is just, it's not doing any good for any of us. We all engage in it to a certain degree because that's how we live here in Canada or elsewhere. And, you know, we know that we need an economic base to live well. But how is it we can do it cooperatively? We have to make changes. And I mean, there's multiple things that have to be done. But until we start with little children and the teachers of those children, it's going to be a long, hard road.
Michelle, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just waiting because I quite enjoyed hearing what you had to say. Teaching our children is our responsibility, absolutely. And part of this COVID situation, I find that parents actually get to know their kids again, because they're not shoving them into daycare. They're not shoving them to a coach. They're not shoving them into after school programs. And I think this is very, very good time for people to start teaching their children how to connect to the land. But again, living in the city, that's not necessarily an easy thing. So I'm going to give you a few examples of well, not good examples, but examples to be aware of, all right? So last year I did a lot of work with elders at my place of work at Somerset West Community Health Center. I brought in, the 4 seasons, we had a community garden, but the garden was our medicine garden, and it was all of the sage and tobacco and all of that fun stuff. And we were very proud of that because we like to believe that we're in a very diverse organization and that they support everyone. However, COVID came along and everything like that, and Aboriginal Month is this month. And my place has not gotten a hold of me, and I'm the only First Nations in my department. And I was the one that kind of spearheaded the whole issue. And my place didn't acknowledge Aboriginal Awareness Month, Aboriginal Awareness Day, but they have acknowledged other holidays from from part of the calendars. And I think one of the things we have to do is start acknowledging. It's called respect of understanding other people's cultures. So if you understand that people need to actually, they have special days like Ramadan. I'm the first one online wishing everybody a happy Ramadan and hope it is what it is. But understanding, I know other people's holidays. I acknowledge them. Mm-hmm. What the hell is wrong with people acknowledging us? Like, seriously. And the work that we put into trying to get that acknowledgement is very frustrating when I come back and been working there for 5 years, and this year, not a single mention because I wasn't present, because I wasn't visible. And I find that very ironic. Another example is our community garden in my area that I work in. I'm a community developer. And we work with our housing association or our community association. So this year the rules were different, and I live in the same community as them, but somehow what I do got totally excluded from the people that I work with, which is the low-income people mainly in my area. And there's a whole list of volunteers and a whole garden going on with no community involvement. And I'm going, but everybody's welcome to go and take the vegetables. And when this was set up, it was set up for the community. So there's exclusions that happen that maybe you need to be aware of and bring us to the table and give us an invite and say, hey, and I'm not saying because you're an Indian you know anything. I hate gardening. I have very little knowledge about it. And I really don't desire that. I have my skills in different areas. And not to put that stereotype on the fact that you're an Indian, you know about this shit. No, I don't. But I do know people that do. And a good person will always refer to somebody else that has the knowledge that they want.
Exactly.
And to share that is a gift to you, not to us, because we already have the knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so to acknowledge that, acknowledge it in the way that you need to acknowledge, first of all, tobacco, which is our first medicines, the tobacco ties, the tobacco pouches, it doesn't matter. One pouch or a tie, no difference in the prayers. Bring in the environmental things such as maybe an Aboriginal Indigenous group to come in and say, hey, we're happy to see you there and we're going to wish you luck. Bring in a Black community people that do their ceremonies of being able to open a garden. I'm sure they have some. Bring in the South Americans for when they have their ceremonies for corn. Bring them in. Celebrate that. Make those available and ask people to do that. Like, you know what? The worst comment I've ever received was 18-year-old child talking to me, and I was about 32 at the time. And we were at work, and she says, oh my God, I've never met a First Nations person before. And if you represent who First Nations people are, this is so cool. And I said, you live in Regina. 52% of the people are First Nations. And you never met one? I wouldn't call that to be a compliment to me. And I told her that. So be aware, and like Lisa, getting me over to the other side of the bridge, a place where First Nations people didn't go when I was there in Regina. It was from the other side of the bridge on, we were all there, but we never really went across that bridge. And you know, understanding, welcome them, like just bring them in. And I don't care what culture it is. And Adriana, you are Indigenous. You are Indigenous to your country. So call yourself indigenous instead of an immigrant.
Yeah. Yes, Adriana.
This is a really good conversation. A must-have conversation, you know.
Maybe we need to talk sometime, somewhere, I don't know, what's an immigrant, who's an immigrant, when do you stop being an immigrant, and all those things, you know, because I've been here for 40 some years and I'm still an immigrant. Like, oh, hello, I was 27 years in back where I came from, and I've been here 41, so I'm still an immigrant. Because I
You're
have
indigenous to your country, right?
I know, yeah, but because I
You're
have
indigenous.
yeah, I have a label in here that says yeah. Those things that we need to talk about and be honest, because those are bias that we all grow up with. When do you stop being an immigrant? What is an immigrant, you know? Because among indigenous population, we move. So we were immigrant to others. So let's not use it as a term of the othering people is the worst that it can happen. Anyways, shut up.
I'm just going to read the comment from, I guess y'all saw it. I love this so much. I think of the need for stronger diversity and cultural recognition. I feel at the same time as disable the struggle in identifying our culture. Do you want to add any more, Heath?
I've been trying to think about that for a long time during this whole thing, and I didn't really think I had anything else that I could really add. It's something I've been trying to work on for a long time, and especially like within like yeah, it's trying to expand myself with our community, and especially considering that our community involves so many people from different cultures and everything, but also trying to like recognize like how the like can I have disability as part of my identity, where it's different. I have a difficult way of being able to look at it as like an identity with a culture. Like there is a background, but it's complex. I don't know. I can't really think of what I'm saying, so.
Now, I think, like, again, diversity is the key. Like, and we're all humans. And further, we're part of nature. Like, we are part of this interconnected web. Like, we have to see ourselves like that instead of seeing ourselves as separate from everybody and different from everybody and superior to people and whatever. Like, it's just, you know, it's that paradigm shift to understand that we are all in this together and we all have gifts that we bring to the table. And the more I understand your gifts, the better off I am. Like, that is the best part of my life, is all of the people that I've met from different communities and different groups. Like, it's what makes my life incredibly beautiful. And so it's just, people are just in their little bubbles, but that's intentional. Like I was saying about divide and conquer, like keep people separate, keep people afraid. And just the way people are portrayed and the communications and the propaganda and the different things, like it's intentional. So, but we need to overcome that. Like we need to look beyond, we need to dig deeper. We need to do a critical analysis of like, who's saying that and why? Like media literacy and really, and also just like getting to know your neighbors and stuff like that and confronting them and like what Myrtle was saying, like it's hard to be like, I always say things that people don't like. People, you know, I get my face ripped off regularly and people don't really like me. Like I can clear a room at a party in like 2 seconds. But like, I'm gonna keep doing it. And it's hard. But it's worth it, you know. I'm not really looking for friends like that in a way. And but it is hard to find your people. Like it is. I agree. And where you feel comfortable and where you can express yourself, where you can be yourself. And that's what we need, like authentic humanity.
Are you gonna go, Heath? I was gonna say that, you know, diversity is inclusive beyond culture and race and tradition. It is diversity includes diversity of abilities and strength and knowledge and different levels and different ways of thinking. And we really need in our own personal lives too to give space for that, to receive it. And a lot of us, we grow and learn and expand when we are exposed and when to diversity and differences. And it's an enrichment to our lives, because I know from my personal experience, when I've worked with people who have had many disabilities, like physical or cognitive, it has enriched my life in terms of increasing my sensitivity and knowledge in that area. And I'm better for it. So we need to be more open, and there's so much to learn. I mean, I think one of the good things that we've done in this whole series is that whole thing about being connected to the land and seeing how important it is. You know, when we have that disconnect, being in a more urban setting, we forget that the land is vital to our survival. You know, something happening back there, whereas it is and needs to be part of who we are, and we need to remain connected in order to, I think, for our reality to be well grounded. You know?
I think a lot of it, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking also about how we use food as a weapon. And that's also part of the problem, because a good example is, as a First Nations person, I'm very proud of the food that we have. You'll understand you cannot buy it in a store because the government doesn't approve it, right? So we go out and we harvest our own with resentment from other people because we get more rights than the others, okay? So I proudly have this meat in my home, and I proudly share it with everyone else. And that's everyone. It does not matter who sits at my table or who sits at the table I share it with. It's every culture. So one day I decided to make a meal, moose meat, which is very valuable in our community. And so the sharing of this is very valuable.
Yeah.
And I made every First Nations dish I was able to make. And no, not from scratch. Some was from can, but what the hell. But it was to share with a group of Muslims. And I really wanted them to love this food and to understand this food. And I invited them to the table, and they all sat at the table. And they said, "What meat is this? How was it killed?" I was never more insulted in my life, because there is no agenda I have when I invite you to my table. And today, before I can invite anyone to my table, I get all these allergies. I can't have this, I can't have that. What are you having? Yet, when I was growing up and I got invited to somebody else's table, it was a thrill, and we ate whatever was in front of us, and we did not question the cook. We complimented them, and we said thank you. And this needs to change. Even the elders are talking about when the youth come walking into their feasts. Traditionally, we are to eat the food. This is Cree tradition. We are to eat the food that is put in front of us, right? And now we have our kids saying, "Oh, I don't want that. It's not KFC." You know? And we're indulging that. we're indulging them to be able to come to ceremony and say, oh, poor baby, I brought you my own food. You know what? Then you'll go to somebody else's table and say, I don't like it. Did you bring some of my own food? This is when the food becomes a weapon. I understand allergies. I understand that the most. But I don't understand the rudeness when people ask me what it's all about. And I've invited them kindly to sit at my table with no agenda. And I think that needs to be talked about also.
Yes. Natasha, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I think it was just something that I thought of when all of you were speaking. I think it comes down to compassion. And I think people have a lot of their own wounds that they're not willing to sort of work on, or maybe they are, or just maybe they don't see them. And then when you're not able to have compassion for yourself, it's hard to go out there and have compassion for everyone, for your neighbors, for the world. I think it's just a lack of like compassion, like getting down to the heart, like you said, getting back to, like Michelle was saying, getting back to the land, like sort of getting back to sort of your own landscape, and then being able to sort of go outwards. I don't know, just something that came to mind. And Michelle, I'm a Muslim, and I apologize for the way you were treated. In our, I know some people are very strict on eating halal meat, but for most of us, if we were invited to someone's table, we respect our host by eating what's in front of us. Obviously allergies, etc. But there's different schools of thought on that. And certainly there are things that we don't eat, like pork and like vulture, like certain birds of prey that are totally like haram, which means impermissible. But anything that's like anything with hoots is allowed, birds and like different things like that. So I don't want to say anything wrong. Obviously, I'm not a scholar, but I would say that yeah, it was very sad to hear you say that, and I'm sorry that you had to have that certain group of people that sort of had that sort of mentality. So yeah, thank you.
Wow, this was really good.
I'm signing off. Adios, everyone. Au revoir.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks very much for coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Righting Relations.
Wonderful.
Denise, hang tight. Murta, hang tight.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Those were
thanks everybody.
good
Thank
annals.
you, everyone. Thanks.
Take care.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
I just love that, the talk of compassion and empathy. Like, I just, like, that is where we need to be. Like, we need to approach everything in that way instead of approaching people with suspicion and like the competitiveness and like the power over and like just this whole paradigm. It just needs to not be like that. Like, and I think like I try and approach things in that way, like, you know, peace, like from a peace perspective, empathy and compassion. Like, it's hard for sure. Absolutely. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm learning, but I love that. The compassion and empathy, like that is everything. I love that.
Well, Michelle, thank you very much for joining us. I am so glad you did. Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you.
I know it's kind of crazy. I did not get to promote. I don't know how come it finished all of a sudden, but I did not get to promote. Adriana is going to be on July 8th. And Adriana is doing popular education and food security lessons from her experience in Toronto. And so we look forward to having that. In her session, we will learn about how popular education can be used to increase the capacity of those involved in food security, community-based initiatives, and to expand their understanding of food as human rights and the participatory role they play in shaping their own food projects. So we so look forward to that. I also need to thank Denise for the presentation and the hard work that she's put in. I also want to thank SCIC for supporting you in that journey, and for the whole Righting Relations team in Regina for supporting us and you. We also need to thank John Humphrey Center in Edmonton for their support, and Nixie for her support in designing the posters, in connecting us with Eventbrite and doing all that groundwork so that this can go smoothly. And obviously the Catherine Donnelly Foundation, because they support this in terms of money-wise and that type of thing. Right now, on the heels of this, Righting Relations has another webinar coming up at 3. And I know it is tough, so I'm gonna get off because I need to switch IDs so that they can use this ID to use it. But I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much, Myrta. Thank you, Jordanos, for being present. Kim, thank you so much. I know you're at work. Miranda, I appreciate you being there. Thank you so much. I so appreciate this. And I think we're growing and learning, like all these things, we can go on and have some really good conversations on this. So it's really, really good.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Lisa.
You're
Thank
very
you,
welcome.
everybody.
Thank you all so much. Kim,
Have
thank
a
you.
wonderful day.
You
Yeah.
too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Guys, it was
Take care.
awesome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
What's the next meeting for Righting Relations?
It is invasion. If you go to writingrelations.ca under events, it's the one coming up on evasion. I don't have it. Denise, what is the title coming up right now?
It's Mija. It
Right.
is,
Mother Earth.
just give me a second here. It is, sorry, I have to find it. Mother Earth Justice Advocates are the group in Regina.
Edmonton.
And I got it here, just hang on one second. Because there is another Righting Relations ones though, like you were talking about Invasion. It's the film screening of Invasion. That's
it. That's it. Yeah.
yeah.
That's today or tomorrow?
That's tonight, isn't it? At 6?
That's tonight. I have so many things. I'm just going block to block because I have another one at 3, but I know they're waiting for me to get off in order for them to connect.
Okay. See
So
ya.
I'm gonna run. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.